Oh hey, didn't see you there. Welcome to my garage, where I have knowledge. Today we're going to be talking about cross-site request forgery. Now that sounds like a very big word, and that's because it is. The acronym here is CSRF. You ever wondered how hackers are able to steal your bank account information or maybe make a transfer from your bank account to their bank account without you even knowing in the first place? Let's talk about this attack type. So the CSRF attack type consists of an attacker submitting a form on your behalf. So let's say that there is a bank account transfer URL, right? It's a specific URL that you go to with specific parameters, and it will perform that request, because ultimately everything has to be in the form of a request for a server to essentially work, right? So let's say you click the little transfer button on your account, you're signed in and everything, you've signed in to bank.com, you have clicked on the transfer button, and then it wants you to input, the transfer to account and the amount that you want to transfer. And then after you click transfer again on that, it's going to take those two input boxes, turn those into parameters for the URL, and then submit a specific URL, specific request to that whatever endpoint it is that needs to perform that request. So that final URL that performs the request, performs the transfer to that account, is the URL that would be vulnerable in this scenario, and the URL that an attacker is going to use. After an attacker finds this state-changing URL, or the final request that performs the state change or a change on the endpoint, right, like a bank account transfer, password reset, something like that, they're going to try and get you, the user, to click on a link that automatically submits this request. And what's going to happen whenever it submits the request from your local browser is your browser is going to take the cookies, the session cookies that it has in its storage, and transfer them onto the request automatically without you doing anything, and submit the request to the endpoint, the server, in order to create the overall request. So the attack would work like this. You click on the malicious link that the attacker sends that automatically does the state change, right? So let's say it's a bank transfer link that transfers $1,000 from whatever target account to the attacker account. Okay, so first step, you click on the link. The link is going to go to that legitimate domain, bank.com, which you've already signed into and already have session cookies for. So it's going to go directly to that domain, and then it's going to go, oh, okay, so this user is already signed in, we already have session cookies for this user, we're going to use those session cookies here, and then automatically submit the bank account transfer request from this logged in user's account, your account, to the attacker account, let's say transferring $1,000 to the attacker account. That's exactly how this type of attack would work. That's exactly why this type of attack is very dangerous, because it's not only easily deployable, easily scalable, and it's easily exploitable too. And one of the most popular examples of this type of attack would be the Bangladesh bank heist back in 2016. But keep in mind that this was not the only reason for the attack happening. It's just part of the attack. Also note that CSRF, or cross-site request forgery, is very often paired with cross-site scripting, or XSS. I don't know why we have to acronymize everything, but that's the way that it is. Okay, now let's just go over briefly how an attack like this would work once again. First, you have to go to that legitimate website, bank.com, and log in, right? And then the server sends over a session cookie and gives you that session cookie to store in your browser, so you don't have to log in every single time you want to make some type of authentication request, like changing your password, making a bank account transfer, anything like that. That's all used with that session cookie. And if you want to learn more about session cookies, I talk a little bit about this in my other video, which will be here. It's up there, buddy. In this video, I talk about the web session how web sessions work, how websites serve pages to you, and just generally how the web interacts with your network components. Okay, going back to the example, so you've logged in, you have a session cookie now, and then from here, you're gonna go to that transfer funds page that we were talking about earlier. You're gonna click on transfer funds, and then it's gonna take you to another page that goes, okay, how much do you wanna transfer? You fill in all the information, and you're like, okay, I wanna transfer $1,000 from my savings account to my checking account, okay? And then you click to transfer again to like finalize the transfer, and by clicking that button, it's going to submit that state-changing URL to the bank.com servers with those input parameters that you specified, the account to information and the amount information. Now when the server receives this request, it's going to look up the session cookie that you've had and sent over from your browser in the request, and it's going to look it up in its database. And it's going to find that it's a valid session cookie for your user account with this password. Here's the session cookie that's valid right now. And this is a very simplified example, but a lot of databases will have like multiple session cookies that are valid at one point in time. Most of them are going to have a session cookie expiration date. What an attacker is going to do is find that second transfer funds button that submits the actual request to the server to perform the transfer of funds. They're going to find that URL, and they're going to embed it inside of a page that they control or a form that they control. So this could be in the form of an iframe within a web page. It could be an entire web page that they control, or it could just be a form, a standalone form that they control, right? And it doesn't even need to be a form. It could be an image that the source of the image is set to automatically submit a request to this URL. And then because you have those local session cookies on your browser, it's going to send those over automatically, and boom, you're out $1,000 just like that. Halo, halo, halo. Hoo-hoo. Some prevention mechanisms that are built into modern day systems for CSRF would be within the REST API. And most modern libraries are going to include automatic prevention mechanisms for most security vulnerabilities, especially the common ones. But there are still several ways that you can circumvent these controls as an attacker, and you can also mess it up as a defender through misconfiguration. On top of that, some authority, maybe IEEE, I don't know, created anti-cross-site request forgery tokens, anti-CSRF tokens. With every request that is sent to that server that is some kind of validation request, like a transfer funds request, it's going to ask for a completely randomized security token here. The server is going to be looking for something like that. And if it's not submitted, it's going to invalidate the request and deny it entirely. On that note, there are also some ways that attackers can circumvent this as well by generating their own CSRF tokens. If CSRF tokens are not configured correctly, an attacker can just randomly guess what they are or figure out the scheme that that's used to create them and create their own valid CSRF tokens. And sometimes they aren't even validated. It's just looking for a header CSRF token or a value of CSRF token. You can submit whatever you want into that, and the server might not even be checking if it's a valid token in the first place. It might just check if there's a token at all. Now, there's also cookie protection mechanisms here, and that would be the same site attribute on cookies. So the same site attribute just says that in order for this cookie to be valid, it has to be referred from the exact same site. So whenever you send it from bank.com to the servers, right, the servers are going to be looking for the refer, and they're going to say, okay, if it's bank.com, it's a valid request, but if it's attacker.site that it's coming from, then it's not a valid request, right, because the refer is not correct. Now, as with everything, the common theme here is you can always mess it up in configuration. So for example, there's two different ways to configure same-site cookies. One of them is strict, that's what the verbiage is, it's called strict, and it means any third party that submits a request to this website or this specific URL or whatever it is that has this configuration on it, it's going to be invalidated. However, there's also LAX, L-A-X, which allows you to submit it from third-party addresses. So obviously, if that's not configured correctly, then you could have some inherent vulnerabilities there. And then there's also LAX, L-A-X, which allows only GET requests to that domain from third-party addresses or domains. But as with everything, you can always mess it up here, because a GET request for some state-changing URLs, all you need is a GET request appended by some data that you're trying to retrieve, right? Like maybe it's a database that you're trying to read. You don't need a POST request to read data from a database. You just need to do a GET request. And as always, there will be links in the description down below to help you understand these concepts. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you like and comment your thoughts down below. And if you want to see more videos about knowledge, then make sure to let me know. Also, follow me on Twitter if you have a Twitter. Thanks, and have a good day.